Well, it's Saturday the 2nd of July. This is episode 26 of 301 Permanently Moved Online, a personal podcast 301 seconds in length, written, recorded and edited by me, at the JMO. William Gibson first said, "The future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed," in 2003. During my 20s, I arrogantly thought this phrase was about me. Living in the West meant living in the future, owning a smartphone, or sending and spending Bitcoin in 2012. But the more I learn about the history of computing, see episode 22-23, I realise how wrong I was. The future is already here, but by the time it gets distributed, it's coming from the past. I spent June reading about mainframe computers and old operating systems. Did you know that in the 1960s, IBM spent more money on its System 360 project than the US government spent on the Manhattan Project during the Second World War? This effort produced the first suite of computers to run microcode, or rather, computers that made the distinction between operating system and architecture. It cost IBM a staggering amount of money to get us to the computing paradigm that we have today. But it's the PLATO mainframe that I want to talk about. PLATO, Programmed Logic for Automatic Teaching Operations. It began life in the early 1960s under the guidance of the electrical engineer Donald Bitzer at the University of Illinois. Bitzer believed in collaborative production and recruited a team of so-called creative eccentrics to help write the software. The team included university professors and high school students. Together, they built a future that is still being unevenly distributed to us today. Bitzer, in addition to being the godfather of the PLATO mainframe, invented the plasma screen flat panel display and the touchscreen. Both technologies were integrated into PLATO systems from 1964. Star Trek the original series, meanwhile, still imagined computers with cathode ray monitors and analog push buttons. Mainframes are interesting computing environments. You share a computer and connect via a terminal, sort of like the relationship between web browser and cloud application that we have today. By the mid-1970s, PLATO was able to support thousands of concurrent users sharing the same code space, or dare I say it, the same world. Here are some of the social features that users of the PLATO system enjoyed. A general purpose message board, electronic mail, notes files, a system very similar to newsgroups, real-time one-to-one text chat using a program called Term Chat. Any user could message any other user active on the system directly. There was also a program called Talkomatic, the first multi-user chat room system. Up to 5 people could communicate in real time. In 1973, at launch, it supported up to 6 rooms with 5 people per room. According to David R. Woolley, writing in 1994, Talkomatic logged over 40 hours of use per day at launch. PLATO also had screen sharing software called Monitor Mode. A user could share their screen and chat to a viewer via text chat. In the mid-1970s, Anonymity Mode was also introduced to newsgroups as an experiment. Users could leave notes on a public message board with their ID marked as anonymous. Sounds familiar. Celebrities, characters, and influencers all emerged in this environment welcoming identity play. An undergraduate student at the University of Delaware became the PLATO humorist Dr. Graper. You can find a complete archive of his surrealistic writings at grapenotes.com. His first post from July 1977 included these lines: "I love exposure, I need attention. Show me how to get both, and you'll get my love." Which sums up social media pretty well, doesn't it? In the early 1970s, PLATO users were participating in what we would now call an online community. People from across the country were meeting in Talkomatic, then carrying on romances via term talk and email, etc. This, of course, was just the educational part of the system. It also had games. In 1974, mere months after the release of the first Dungeons & Dragons rule set, students at the University of Illinois released D&D, which, you guessed it, is a top-down dungeon crawl roguelike game where you explore a dungeon based on the D&D rule set. The same year, Jim Bowery developed Spasim, a 32-player network spaceflight simulation game and 3D first-person space shooter. Yes, that's right. In 1974, there was a 32-player 3D network first-person spaceflight simulation game, and teams of 8 people could fly spaceships around 4 planetary systems. By 1977, things had evolved even further. Avatar was a 2.5D graphical interactive role-playing dungeon that supported up to 60 concurrent players. It was so difficult that one person could not play it alone. To survive, players had to run in groups. Avatar had in-game chat to facilitate this. Like any virtual world, a community sprung up inside the game. Over 600,000 in-game hours were spent in that world. By 1985, however, the PLATO system was made obsolete. Mainframes aged out in favour of the personal computer revolution. Individuals sitting at their own computing machines. It would be another 10 years until networks connected individual users together again. And ever since, the 1960s collaborative code space future PLATO envisioned is still being rebuilt and redistributed to us today.